Prime Minister Modi and US President Donald Trump is likely to take place on the sidelines of the G7 summit in France. Trump has confirmed his presence while PM Modi has been invited by President Emmanuel Macron and is expected to attend the summit. It would be their first face-to-face meeting since February 2025. And for some more information, we have Siddhant Mishra on this broadcast. Siddhant, if you could tell our viewers more about this particular meeting that may happen at the G7 summit.
Of course, Harsh, if this meeting takes place, this would be for the first time in 1.5 years when both leaders will come face to face. Perhaps this meeting could be taking place in France at the time of the G7 summit. So White House correspondents are confirming that President Trump will be attending this year's G7 summit in France. Invite has already been extended by President Macron to Prime Minister Modi. In fact, same was reiterated by him during his presence in India for the AI Action Summit in February. He once again invited Prime Minister Modi. So far, there has not been any official word from the Indian government, perhaps confirming about Prime Minister traveling to France. But in all likelihood, Prime Minister Modi will be participating in the G7 summit in France. In fact, this would be the first meeting between the two leaders, as I said, in last 1.5 years. Last both leaders met in February 2025 when Prime Minister Modi visited Washington right after the inauguration of President Trump. After which there were a lot of disturbances in the relationship due to tariff. Post Operation Sindoor, US stance, then US imposing sanctions on India for buying Russian crude, so on and so forth. But both leaders remained in touch. In fact, there have been multiple telephonic conversations between the two leaders. In fact, the recent one was related to the developments in West Asia. Last year in June, Harsh, Canada was hosting the G7 summit in Kananaskis, and before Prime Minister Modi could reach Kananaskis, President Trump had to leave Kananaskis to go back to DC because of the situation in West Asia. And perhaps last year there was a chance for both leaders to meet at the G7, but they could not because of different times of arrivals and departures. This time around, in all likelihood, both leaders could meet in France, Harsh, and perhaps also since Secretary Rubio is in India this week, perhaps there's definitely going to be a discussion around preparing groundwork ahead of the key meet between the two leaders in France.
Right, Siddhant. Now, Siddhant, as we know that the relations between the two countries, India and US, were going through a rough patch, if you were to say, if we talk about the whole tariff fiasco that happened. But this particular meeting, if this happens, how is that meeting going to change that?
Well, of course, when two leaders meet, Harsh, a lot can happen, happen after that, because a leader-to-leader understanding is very, very important, especially when two democratic countries, they have relations. And Prime Minister Modi and President Trump get along very well. In fact, in the run-up to the elections, also many times President Trump mentioned Prime Minister Modi's name, that he's my good friend, he's my buddy, so he's a total killer, so on and so forth. All those things were said by President Trump for Prime Minister Modi. In fact, in Trump 1.0, there were two high-level visits taking place between the two countries. Diaspora events, Howdy Modi, and the other event here in Ahmedabad at Narendra Modi Stadium. So the personal connect, the personal bonhomie, mutual admiration for each other still continues. And in fact, if you hear President Trump talking about Prime Minister Modi ever, when journalists ask him, he always refers to Prime Minister Modi